actions within the workplace. Obviously, people work in very different workplaces with very different levels of organisation within them. But if you can chat to colleagues or organise a workplace meeting, or if you're in a unionised workforce, if you can call a union meeting to talk about the Vestas struggle, then please do so. The NUT, and particularly Lambeth NUT, have developed a teacher's pack. So if you work at a school or college, you can download from the Vestas site a teaching pack to have a class on Vestas. All of this information, plus that teacher's pack, is at the Save Vestas at wordpress.com website, which I'd encourage everybody to go to, and that also lists all of the many other actions that are taking place, both on the Isle of Wight and throughout the UK. It's Save Vestas as one word, .wordpress.com. The other thing to talk about is that through trade union councils mainly, Campaign Against Climate Change and Workers' Climate Action, there's been a North and a South London support group set up to coordinate the planning of the campaign. Now, the last South London support group before the National Day of Action has actually happened, but the North London support group is on Monday at the Lucas Arms on Gray's Inn Road at 8:15 p.m. So any North Londoners in particular that would like to get along to that. They're also, next week, there's a motion put forward by the RMT that's going to the TUC conference. I mean, one of the reasons why there isn't a Vestas worker here today is they're all over the country and at the TUC kind of speaking and trying to whip up support for the campaign. So that's what's happening. So why do I think, or why do we think, maybe as organisations, that Vestas was important? I think if you were going to hypothetically create a dispute that would clearly show the weakness and the lack of seriousness of the government's green agenda, you would probably formulate something similar to what happened at Vestas. You know, here we have a government that, as the occupation was happening, was talking about 1.2 million green jobs by 2020. Lovely number, probably a decade too late, but never mind. And talking about £120 million for renewable energy, declared itself absolutely impotent to act on these workers' behalf. And really, there was an absolutely kind of fascinating Ed Miliband article in The Guardian, which I don't know whether people read, where he basically blamed the British people for their lack of enthusiasm for wind turbines, which is why he couldn't get involved in the Vestas dispute and why he couldn't do anything. And I think when we're out there kind of talking to people about the need for this kind of action, and when we're out there talking about, you know, mobilising for Copenhagen, which I know we'll be talking about in the plenary, and the need to not just go along with these very reformist kind of tinkering while Rome burns kind of stuff. Vestas is a really clear dispute to use about why that kind of stuff doesn't work, because this is what it leads to. Also, there's been a hell of a lot of talk about the kind of red-green coalition that came together around kind of Vestas. And I suppose as eco-socialists you would say, yes, that's exactly what we need. Of course it always was. But it is heartening to see that you had trade unions, that you had you know, the Green Party, that you had all the different kind of left-wing parties and groups and organisations and climate campers all down at Vestas. And also the other important thing for it was that, you know, this was not an isolated occupation. There had been Vistian, there had been some of the university occupations, and it kind of shows that this is a form of organised action that does work, you know, to a certain extent. Obviously they didn't win all their gains, but what they did gain was a lot of kind of exposure and a lot of support. And And I think that's important to take on to, you know, the ongoing struggles that we are going to have in the current economic climate, and we're going to need to have on the issue of climate change. And I think particularly looking at where Vestas was, this is a small, traditionally kind of conservative, with a small and a big C, actually, island, that Vestas wasn't unionised in any way, and it shows that it is possible for a group of workers in that situation to organise themselves successfully. So kind of broadening the Vestas dispute out, which is incidentally exactly what the Vestas workers themselves are doing. If you hear any of them speak now, they are thinking of it much more in kind of macro terms themselves now. I think we need to think about a kind of two-pronged approach for the future. I think the specific Vestas struggle mustn't be allowed to peter out. You know, there is still a fight to be had down there, and it's really important that we don't kind of move on from it to the next struggle in that way that often happens. But there obviously is going to be a more general fight for green jobs. You know, we're in a situation, whatever green shoots of recovery or green shoots of profit are happening, unemployment is going to be rising. We are looking towards Copenhagen, and I'm sure Romain will go on to talk a bit more about that. And I suppose the challenges for me that come up from it are, how do you sustain that red-green coalition, and what are the mechanisms, and how do we kind of try and fight and win that argument? You know, in terms of persuading everyday people out there that eco-socialism is something that, you know, has answers and something worth fighting for. In terms of ensuring that the commitment that we saw from some of the more red organisations to this green cause doesn't peter out. And also, you know, in terms of talking to climate campers, you know, thinking about the arguments that you use to persuade them that they don't just want to fight for people who work at Vestas, but they might want to get involved in struggles. You know, I'm thinking in the news, you know, there are people at Ellesmere Port and Luton that are looking at losing their jobs, and how do you persuade people from the broader green movement that it's important that they get involved in those struggles as well? So, I'm finished, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add on to your point, Chair, if that's all right.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can segue into your...
Well, I was just going to, adding on to your point about Vestas and why this sort of became a sort of a beacon for us all to rally round, is because of all the jobs that we have. These are the jobs that you would have thought would be really, what I was talking about earlier, future-proofed. These are the jobs producing the goods that we need. All right, yes, we all know now that they weren't the exact proper dimensions or anything for the wind turbines that we are fighting to try and get planning permission for and getting denied all around the country. But that's a minor thing with a lathe. I'm sure I'm right there, being a bit of a welder myself. So I'm sure these skills are transferable, the machinery can be set up for different dimensions, the people working there have got these skills, and it could be adapted and adopted. I think what the interesting thing that we need to talk about, if we are, and I know Jonathan Neal went down to meet up with the workers there, who perhaps started off as very ordinary employees, I'm not talking about agency capture there, but just living their ordinary lives, earning their income, going home, and to go from that to taking that step, the disobedience, you know, the standing up against the expected behaviour patterns, took quite a lot of courage, but then they found that empowering, and they found that they have got a voice, just like, you know, we've had stories of people before fighting against sort of pollution scandals and things, you know, ordinary mothers with that much of an education, learning how to sort of get to grips with documents and information and fighting their cause, and then finding that they are articulate because they're speaking the truth.